Hello there, ni hao. I'm Dr. Russell Sharp, the presenter for Hydroponics Daily, and today we are talking about some interesting Chinese hydroponic installations. These are not commercial installations, but they are interesting, so I thought I'd go through them in today's episode. I've been to China a few times, but I've never seen any hydroponic buildings or production facilities, so always interested to know that. The first one is Vertical Farm Hengshui, and designed by Van Bergen Kolper Architects. So they sound Dutch, and it's an innovation centre for metropolitan food production, so urban farming, in Hengshui, China. I have no idea where that is, so let me just Google that. It is below Beijing, roughly halfway between there and Qingdao, where the beer comes from. So the reason I'm talking about this innovation center is it looks amazing. So it's like 4 stories high and it looks almost corrugated. I shall put a picture on the podcast artwork. The top layer is fruiting crops. So it's like a really tall sort of like penthouse with what looks almost like sodium lamps in there, but I bet they're not sodium lamps, and big vents. And so therefore where the tomatoes and the cucumbers grow. And then there's a layer below that looks like it's for propagation, and then a multi-story bottom layer, which is like vertical crops, so like leafy veg. And obviously there's a big entrance, and it's really interesting. So it's using water recycling, passive heat recovery, natural cooling, to show how cities could produce food in the future, and also to teach people about vertical farming. It's been built at the International Horticultural Park, so the sort of the showcase area in Hengshui. Thinking around that area, there is big horticulture industry. So like the Shandong province that's where all the garlic, loads of the world's garlic comes from, things like that. So very, very, we think of China as being like a consuming country, but it also produces a lot when it comes to horticulture. Obviously, we think of it as a producing country when it comes to goods and things like that. But often we think of it as like importing things like sorghum and rice and things like this from America and stuff. But it is actually an exporter as well. Certainly fruits and horticultural products. It's 12,800 square meters. So that is just over a hectare, isn't it? That's massive for an indoor thing with its basically a demonstration unit, really. Automated vertical cultivation of leafy veg and fruits under LEDs, the rooftop greenhouse so that they get natural light, but also what appears to be extra lighting in there as well. So the lower 2 floors, automated vertical cultivation without daylight. So although you can see in through the windows are there just for people to look in, I think, rather than for you to actually get that light in for photosynthesis. There's also some beautiful rooftop classrooms in the rooftop greenhouse for schools to go and visit and universities to go and visit and do experiments, almost like lab type classrooms. So that's an interesting addition. So that is a fantastic facility. There's some serious money gone into, unless I'm looking at an AI generated model of it, but looks like it's the real deal. So be interesting to see when that opens. The other one is a really bizarre one. It's a group of Canadians who are of Chinese descent, or I don't know if they're first generation, second generation Chinese, and they have set up a hydroponic indoor grow in a retired warship in Canada. So in British Columbia, in the traditional territory of the Squamish people. Never heard of those, but I guess they are Indigenous Canadians. And so this particular boat in the Burrard Inlet was once a Bay-class minesweeper, braving the Arctic ice and Pacific storms. She served in the Canadian Navy through the Cold War, and she's now growing food inside her hull. So I don't know what to make of this story, really. It's really weird. So there's a guy called, or I don't know, Rong Gi, might be a man, might be a woman, I don't know, because it's Chinese names always struggle. And they say Canada doesn't need more weapons on the water. We need food, we need resilience. And that might be true. But I can tell you something, China has got weapons on the water. Their navy is increasing dramatically. The number of boats, it's overtaken America in the number of boats they've got, ships even, in their navy. So these Chinese people or Chinese descent people saying that Canada doesn't need a navy with weapons, I think you'll find China does, and China and Russia have got a lot of interest in Canadian water, especially around the Arctic for Arctic passage and things like this. So I think Canada will be foolish to turn many more of their boats, their ships, into floating hydroponic farms. But it doesn't have to be naval boats. I guess it could be any boat, and it could get to people in remote areas of Canada, especially sort of ice-breaking type vehicles, ships, and obviously in very isolated communities where it's cold in the winter, they really do struggle to get fresh fruit, fresh vegetables. And if they can, the prices are very high. So hydroponic vertical farms have good potential there. We talked about that when we talked about North Dakota, which is in a very similar situation. Perhaps fewer indigenous people that might struggle with their diet, but certainly logistically, there's an issue there, and there's even more of an issue in Canada because the area we're talking about is even higher. Not sure how successful this one will be. It doesn't seem it's very commercial. It seems more of like a demonstration project and a sort of cultural project. They've got a library full of Chinese books for people to read, which sort of doesn't tally with the fact that they would be going to indigenous, places where the native Canadians, like the Inuit. Am I allowed to say Inuit? I'm, treading carefully here. Inuit people probably can't read Chinese, so that's a bit wasted on them. But yeah, I don't. They're in the article, they're complaining about the regulations in Canada for crops and how they are optimized for soil-grown crops, and they're a problem for getting crops out of a hull of a ship and selling them without, breaching a load of regulations. So I don't think it'll be. I think the scale is too small for it to be a massive commercial success, but certainly as a novel and interesting thing that people can go and look at, and almost like a museum, then yeah, it holds real potential, and you could go around sort of communities on the coastline, and so it's and showcase that. I think it would be really interesting to visit. So if you are anywhere near the Burrard Inlet, let's have a look where the Burrard Inlet is. It would appear that it's near Vancouver, so not that remote a location really, but certainly of interest. Go say ni hao to the Chinese speakers in the ship that is the hydroponic ship. Yeah, really weird. If you've ever grown hydroponic crops on a ship, get in touch. If you know of any novel Chinese or Canadian hydroponic setups, let me know. I've always wanted to go to somewhere in Canada called Uranium City. I saw it on a map when I was a kid. I was like, what the hell is Uranium City? But that's cool. Something like, something out of The Simpsons, some sort of nuclear powered city. I would imagine it's just a place with a massive quarry where they take uranium ore. But yeah, I bet they don't have many fresh fruit and vegetables in Uranium City. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. If you're a Canadian and you've been to Uranium City, let me know. I've gone down a Wikipedia wormhole. I'm now looking at the population history of Uranium City. As of 2021, the population of this city was 91 people. Oh, it's a shame, isn't it? At its height, in 1981, it had a population of 2,500. So in the UK, that wouldn't even be a village. That would be a hamlet, not even a town. But yeah, if you're up there in the middle of nowhere in Uranium City, then fresh fruits and vegetables would be near impossible to get hold of. So maybe hydroponics is for you. Whereas today, it's very off topic because we're talking about Chinese hydroponics today. But yeah, I will post a picture and a link to this vertical farm Hengshui because it is something to behold. Thank you very much for listening. Until tomorrow, goodbye.